r/AskReddit. Looking back, what's a situation in your life when you were the asshole? I dated my best friend's ex-girlfriend. The actual worst year of my life. When I was a little kid I mixed up the words lesbian and pedestrian. Long story short, there was a circular park near my house that my mom would walk around for exercise. I would ride my bike next to her. As she was walking I was riding ahead of her trying to clear a path by saying excuse me lesbians instead of excuse me pedestrians. Back in 7th grade. This really shy girl used to have a huge crush on me. Her friends told me she would leave pay early to go to the changing room in order to look pretty for the next class that we're both in. Then, her friends kept asking for me to talk to her and ask her out, but I refused because to me, she looked like an alien. Unfortunately, her friends told her and she was devastated. I was honestly just stating why I didn't want to date her, but I realized how fucking mean and terrible my comments were. I apologized to her for being an insensitive jerk and she forgave me. We managed to become friends in 8th grade and all throughout high school. I still feel bad about whenever I think of her. Setting up for a huge artisan trade show that involved a massive vetting process. It was very difficult to be selected. We had a day to set up. And as we're all working our asses off trying to make the best display of our goods, one booth across from us remained a total ghost town. To the horror and shock of the rest of us hard-working artisans. Fast forward to the opening day of 10 days of this massive Christmas artisan show, as in huge. And the empty booth owners show up. Set up a basic Costco table and dump cardboard boxes around. We're all rolling our eyes and snickering at this point. I mean, come on. What losers? Yeah, those losers were selling authentic Peruvian sweaters and hats, sold out in 3 days. Packed up their Costco table. Humbly leaving with way more than we could ever hope to make. Meanwhile, the rest of us schmucks had to kiss ass and keep our pathetic shit-eating grins on for another 7 days. I will forever look back on that experience as a lesson of making assumptions and being a total ass. Which I was. My BFF and I have a gif we send on the first day of our periods. The one from The Shining with the elevator doors opening and the blood everywhere. After her first miscarriage I spaced and sent that to her and have hated myself ever since. Pretty sure she doesn't remember. But I'll never forget. Well, when my brother held me as a baby, I apparently kicked him in the nuts. He tried to make me stop crying. An asshole from day one. Broke up with my girlfriend of 3 years from a subway station payphone in Germany. I was getting ready to live there for the year. And she was planning on moving there with me in a few months. She was living in the States. And she was supposed to come out to visit me that following week. I felt terrible, but it was clear to me we had no future. And I hadn't really been able to admit it to myself until then. I was totally the asshole. She blocked my email not long after that. I was stressing out about finals a few months ago and I accidentally started taking it out on my boyfriend. He called me out on it and I can't apologize enough for it now because I 100% deserve to be called out on it. Late 2015 to, well, June of this year if I'm being honest. I nearly destroyed my marriage before it began. And managed to push my therapist to a point where he didn't think, or even want. I suspect, he could effectively treat me. It took those 2 wake-up calls back to back to acknowledge the actual problem was me. Not the world around me. Ages 16-22. Definitely the time my friends and I bullied the new kid on the block. Nothing physical. But we made fun of him and excluded him from not having a scooter. Then one day he showed up with a new scooter and we bullied him for having a cheapo one. Years later it became apparent that his family wasn't as well off as ours. None of us realized we were picking on the poor kid. And when the family bought him the trendy toy, it just wasn't good enough for us. We were shitty to him and I feel awful about it. Sorry, Omar. In the past I'd subconsciously tune people out mid-conversation and then give a rehearsed response when it was time for me to respond. I didn't even realize I was doing it so much until I'd ask my friends about things that they claimed to have already told me. When I realized it was a problem to be such a shitty listener, I made a conscious effort to fix it and I'm much better about it now. Anything I said or did to my parents between the ages of 15 and 18. They provided me a fantastic life and had perfectly reasonable expectations for me. I was naturally a perpetual dick to them. One moment in particular was the school night. I wanted to go out with friends but my mother said I had to be home by 9 PM. I wanted to stay out later. So I pitched a fit and called my mother the C word. She slapped me across the face so quickly I got whiplash and informed me I'd never use that word in her presence again. Naturally I complained for the rest of the month about how awful my mom is. I had a terrible job in a warehouse and was getting bloody noses every night because there was so much dust. One night I put up a sign that said "This job sucks" on one of the pillars in the back. The next night the line manager bought us all ice cream and as he was walking through the warehouse he saw it. Everybody knew that I had done it but no one was going to snitch. Meanwhile there was this annoying kid named Brandon who was pissing me off and for some reason they suspected him. The next night I almost got into a fight with him over some stupid shit and at the end of the shift they fired him thinking he had put the sign up. I totally got away with it. After getting kicked out of school I overstayed my welcome at a friend's house. I lived there for like 3 months. I never really asked to move in. I was living on the couch. They just kind of said that I was moving in one day. I explained I didn't have any money but still moved into the room when the roommate left. Eventually they kicked me out for not paying. I should have just left. I had parents I could return to. I was homeless by choice. Many years ago I was just starting out on a new position as a project manager. Things weren't going smoothly on this project. Not really in anyone's control but it added stress to myself and my team. One day one of my teammates made a minor and fixable error but I still screamed at them in front of about 10 people, all employees. Like a good 2 minutes tirade about what a fuck up they were. They were a summer student, making minimum wage and I just laid into them. The worst part is they made the mistake because I mislabeled something. Some 10 years later I still manage small to medium teams and I think about that moment a lot. It reminds me to keep my cool in stressful situations and you can provide discipline without being an asshole. Also, owning up to your own mistakes as a leader I feel actually helps the team grow long term and establishes trust with your employees. Yeah. Complete and utter asshole in middle school due to my arrogance and continued to be one even in high school. Now in senior high school I'm still haunted by all the decisions I've made and how shitty a person I was. And it forms a large bulk of the reasons for my insecurities and the like. Guy I dated for about a year in my early mid-20s. Like 3 months into dating, I stopped liking him. But I wasn't mature enough to just man up and break up. So instead, I stopped putting any effort whatsoever into the relationship and probably came across like a total cunt until he finally broke up with me. He wasn't a bad guy. We were just incompatible and I wasn't emotionally ready to be in a serious relationship in retrospect. In high school I told a B girl that I would kill myself if I was B. I'm B. Religion is one hell of a drug. Went on family vacation as a kid, maybe 8 years old. Whenever I saw something I liked or wanted, I went to a different member of the family and asked them if I could borrow the money for it. I have $5 at home. I will pay you back. Did the whole family. And finally reached my father again. First victim. He said, "Are you sure this is not the same $5 I already lent you?" To which two members of the family. Wait. That better not be the $5 I lent you. The jig was up. All told I owed $25. I was an arsehole kid all around though. When I was in elementary school there was this kid who lost his father to cancer during the school year. One day after he came back to school, can't remember how long after, we got into some sort of dispute on the playground. I don't remember exactly how it came to me saying at least my dad isn't dead, but that's exactly what came out of my mouth. I spent the day in the principal's office. To this day this is one of the biggest regrets of my life and I'm 23. I still feel terrible about it because I never got to apologize to the kid because we moved away shortly after. I don't even remember his name but I'll never forget saying that. Most of junior high, I was a bully and picked on people who remained my friends for some reason. Then I realized that I was a bully and stopped. And my relationships improved. I grew up with older brothers and thought that's how boys interacted. I recently read that some advice for fighting bullying is merely pointing out to the bully that he is being a bully. Because we just don't realize it. And push come to shove, no one wants to be a bully. Moved to live closer to my best friend and work with her. Ended up hating the town. Taking it out on her. Spending all my energy complaining about how I'd ruined my life and not gave any thought to her feelings. I moved away and we've kinda repaired things, but it definitely left an impact and I was 100% in the wrong. As a foreman, I berated a man who stunk very badly for not taking regular showers. He insisted that the reason was that he was allergic to water. I told him that it was impossible for a human to survive if they were allergic to water. But he just wouldn't be swayed. Even going as far as listing his symptoms off to me. He ended up quitting after a few weeks of being ostracized by the crew and myself. Years later, I find out that being allergic to water is a real thing. It's not a true allergy, but from what I read at the time it's definitely a real thing. I remember his description of the symptoms and it all matched up. Tony, I'm sorry for being such an asshole. When I broke up with my high school girlfriend of 3 years. Nicest girl ever. I feel like a piece of shit to this day. I thought it was understood I was going across the country for school. This had just been a good high school run, but we weren't gonna do this extremely long distance deal in college. Apparently she didn't know that. At all. I don't know how she kept it together when I, looking back, was very callously telling her, yeah, no, we're not gonna be dating in the fall. Thought you knew that. I don't know why our families are still friends. She met a missionary after that and is now happily married and I think expecting their second. So maybe it was all meant to be for me to be a total douchebag and scare her in the right direction. That still keeps me up at night at times though thinking about it. When I was in kindergarten I spit on someone's head. I wanted to fit in with my friends better. So I shit-talked one of my friends who they hated but was part of my friend group in order to better align myself with them. There was a schism between our group and I sided with them and kicked that other kid of our side to be on the other dude's side whom I hated. I don't regret that schism. The dude who was part of the schism turned out to be a really terrible person. But I regret doing what I did to the kid who was my friend. He was a good dude. I am sorry, dude. You didn't deserve that. I was just too weak to stand up for myself and you and wanted to fit in. I was in a situation where I very desperately needed a prescription from a pharmacy. I dropped the script off and waited the hour they took to fill it. When I went to pick it up, I gave them my date of birth to confirm. They said the DOB was wrong and that I couldn't pick it up. I asked what DOB was listed, and they had the 1st of January 1901. Other than that, it was correctly filled. The pharmacy told me that I had to call the doctor to have it refilled. Despite it obviously being a data entry error on their part. So, I used my angriest shoutiest voice and yelled at a pharmacy clerk who is presumably paid minimum wage. To the point where they were visibly shaking and people were leaving the store. I still feel bad about it. But I got my script without any calls to a doctor or any more waiting. Friendly reminder to sort this thread by controversial because people are forgetting the point of the thread and downvoting anyone who was actually an asshole in their story. There was this really hot girl in my 8th grade yearbook class. I had known her for a while and we were decent friends. But after she hit puberty she became so fucking full of herself. Don't get me wrong. She had the best body in the entire school. But it still pissed me off the way she talked about herself. So I started making very subtle fat jokes. And by the end of the year I was straight up bullying her. She moved away after middle school. No, not because I bullied her. And I instantly felt so much regret. I was such an asshole. At the time I really had no idea what I was saying or the effect it could have on someone. I was just a dumbass kid trying to look cool or something. I've tried a few times to reach out to her and apologize. But she never replied. I don't blame her. I just want her to know how sorry I am and that I didn't mean a single word of it. My freshman year. We were doing presentations. A kid was called up. And I accidentally said, semi-loudly, "Who is that?" I still think about it and still feel pretty shitty about it. I sweep kicked my friend on a pool deck for no reason. He hit the floor hard. He didn't fight me, he just said "what the fuck man?" and walked away. That was mean and uncalled for. I don't know why I did it. I said I found a $100 bill on the ground when I was about 10. Truth was, I knew who dropped it. And it was her lunch money, probably a couple weeks. I kept it. I was mad a girl wouldn't let me pet her therapy dog. I let everybody see my homework except her. Edit. So juvenile of me. I didn't fully understand the purpose of therapy dogs. I saw another guy pet it. Although she looked distressed, she didn't say anything, so I was like, why can't I pet it? All the FSU football players copied my HW though. A friend brought my group of friends to a bar on Halloween weekend. I was dressed up as a cowboy. I noticed that pretty much everyone else at that bar was dressed as a vampire. I went around and complimented a lot of them on their awesome vampire costumes. We eventually left and hopped over to another bar. I'm telling my friend I thought it was weird that everyone there had chosen to dress as a vampire. He tells me that we were actually at a goth bar, and none of them were wearing costumes. My middle school always had a book fair every year, where they would always advertise the different books they were selling. But they also sold other cool trinkets and things that always fascinated the young me. I was easily amused. I wanted to buy a ton of stuff, but didn't have enough allowance money to do it. So I stole money from my sister's bank. $100 to be exact. I've lost track. This girl I knew told me her dad passed away last year in October. I completely forgot since I didn't know her that well. And then around the last day of school we were talking about family. She said, wow, our families are really similar. And I said, well, is your dad nosy and irritating? And she kind of chuckled and said he passed away earlier this year, and I was like, oh, that's right. I'm sorry. But she was a good sport about it, I guess. Every minute of every day up until I was 26. Just ask anyone I assaulted, stole from, spit on, or screamed at. They will confirm that I was, in fact, the asshole. In high school I was a little bit of a friend bully. The kind of person who makes jokes at everyone's expense, including her own, to try to get people to laugh. But I had a rough home life and didn't learn kindness at the time. So I was just kind of shitty about it. I had good intentions, but I laid it on too heavy and didn't make it clear enough I was joking. I don't think I did any damage to anyone. It wasn't too extreme of jokes or anything. I just feel bad in retrospect for being so obsessed with keeping people from disliking me and discarding me that I disregarded their own emotions and feelings. If any of them had ever come to me with a problem with my behavior, I wouldn't have reacted negatively. But you shouldn't have to ask your friends nicely to not bully you. It was when my little brother deleted Minecraft to install Fortnite on my personal computer. I made a throwaway email, changed his email to the throwaway email, changed the password, and told him someone hacked his account. He cried for 2 weeks, and apparently it was an expensive account because he had a lot of rare skins. Back in high school when I started smoking, senior year, was at a house party and trying to look cool. When I finished my cig, I flicked the butt as far as I could away in the air. It landed on a girl's head somewhere in the crowd, and she had one of those teased up puffy hairstyles. Cigarette was still lit and caught her hair on fire a little bit. Oh man. There was this kid in my French class who was such an asshole. Never tried to be nice or make friends with anyone. One day, he came up to me after class and commented, "Nice retro Henley." I thought he was being sarcastic and saying my clothes were old. So I went off on him, telling him he has no friends. No one likes him. His taste sucks. Ect. He just quietly walked away. I realized like a year later that he was genuinely complimenting me. I still feel bad about it. The most stressful parts of my life temporarily made me awful. I still feel some of it. We drove through what I thought was a movie set, going up a switchback on a mountain, and as we passed by I rolled down the window and yelled, "Where's the hot chicks at?" to a camera crew. Again. Thinking they were filming a movie or a show and just on a break. Hence letting cars like ours through. Turns out it was a crime scene or an accident. I can't remember now. And not a movie set. This was over 15 years ago. I remember my friends were really upset about it for a few days. I've always been an asshole in social situations. Whether it's my own carelessness or something else wrong with me, I have a tendency to say pretty fucked up shit out loud and sometimes do stupid things. My intention is usually never to hurt anyone though. It just comes across as intense or crass. I think about this pretty often honestly. I had to be about 7 or 8. I'm in the mall with my mom and sister and it is just about closing time. On our way out of a department store we stop at the bathroom before the ride home. My mom sends me into the men's room on my own. Nobody in the bathroom. For some reason my stupid little brain thinks I'm gonna shit on a bunch of paper towels and slap it against the mirror. I try to think back to why I would ever have this compulsion and I got nothing. Having since worked many service jobs over the years, I am profoundly sorry to that custodian. Well, it's not when I was the asshole, it's that I still am the asshole every now and then. I try really hard not to be. But my parents are both downright assholes, so I was brought up like this. The shit I say in certain situations is unnecessary and I don't realize it till later on when I reflect on what I had said. And I always feel bad for it. I'm working on being more tolerant about things and holding my tongue. And I'm hoping once I have children I can completely rid the assholeness away so that they don't end up like me. Whenever one of my parents' friends came to greet me, I'd sometime mumble things like "get away from me" or "just stay quiet." One particular car ride home, we were dropping my dad's friend. Me and my dad were having a conversation and my dad's friend interrupted and I told him to be quiet. My dad then explained why it was wrong because there was actually an important topic at hand. When I was in high school, I was a pretentious little shit who judged people by what media they consumed. I was that hipster, but before that term was around, arsehole who didn't listen to anything on the radio, watched foreign black and white classic films and read books solely under the classics label or anti-war stuff. If you engaged in popular media, I definitely looked down on you for it. I have since moved to a let people enjoy things approach. As long as your enjoyment isn't harming anyone, who cares? My school had a peer tutoring program that me and a couple other kids did. There was this one kid that was so annoying and wouldn't shut up. I was livid. I tore into this third grader multiple times to the point that the other kids started to get concerned about me. Looking back, I should have been less harsh. A girl in middle school was making fun of me for having a zit on my forehead, saying it looked like I had ringworm. She had very hairy arms at the time and I said something along the lines of monkey arms and she started crying and ran out of the room. In elementary, me and my friends always tried to get the class bully in trouble for bullying us. We did stuff and then blamed it on him. 'Twas a good time. Pretty much anything I did from the age of 13 to 20. Looking back I regret so much. And I wish I could change the way I treated people. Good news is that was just a small part of my life. And I've got the rest of my life to be better. I was an aspiring writer hoodlum in middle school. As someone with writing skills and interest, I was invited to join a group that would meet the author Walter Dean Mayers at the local library. I went and he gave a great talk about structuring books and creative writing and answered any of our questions. After this, we had the option to have him sign one of his books. They were for sale if we did not already have one. No one did, so most kids lined up to buy books and meet him for a signature. The line to meet him was set up right next to the table with the books for sale. I got in line, discreetly swiped a book, and had this poor guy sign the stolen property. Pretty shit thing to do. I don't know how my young brain rationalized it. I still have the book. This happened 2 years ago. My dad had died and his sister and my cousins were staying with us. One morning, we were all playing when suddenly she comes up and says to stop. While we don't stop and keep playing, she hits a few of us and then me. I really lost it and then screamed at her for a minute. She said nothing to me. Nothing at all. Because she knew I was hurting. She knew that anything she would say would just hurt me more. I should never have said anything like that to her. Because in those days of sorrow until now, she has always supported our family. I should never have screamed at her and now it is the biggest regret of my life and I will never be able to forgive myself. I was really the arsehole there. Edit. I am a Pakistani. It's normal for a parent if they hit their children. In a normal way. Punishments here are far much worse than being grounded. Had a hard time telling people no. Especially if they asked me out, didn't want to come off rude. Got asked out by a girl for the first time. Said yes and we kissed and stuff. Barely lasted a few days cause I'm awkward and her personality was shit. Called me a bitch for half a year. Looking back. Yeah. Back in my rage all day everyday college days we'd routinely party until the sun came up. One time a roommate came downstairs and turned down our music. As he was walking back upstairs I cranked it back up. He came back and started jawing at me about respect and I wasn't having any of that. Huge asshole energy. At my first dance, I told a girl who asked me to dance no. Because I was working up the courage to ask one of my friends instead. Doesn't seem like much. But I still wish I could apologize to whomever I declined. This was 2 years ago. Don't remember my exact age. But no older than 10. I was in a kids area of a health club while my parents were working out. Doing normal kid things and whatnot. A girl I had known for a few years from school was there frequently and had a crush on me and would just not leave me alone. She followed me everywhere and always wanted to talk to me. Being the very mature child I was, I determined the best method was to yell and say I hate you. Leave me alone. I don't like you or something to that degree. Yeah. That was not good. Not at all. I was a massive asshole. No one deserves that kind of treatment even if I was a child. I had a group of friends. 14-16 years old roughly. Spend the night at my house. One of them used the excuse to go off with her boyfriend instead. She came knocking on my window at 2 AM. Wanting to come in. I told her to fuck off and would let her in. When I was young and horny and dumb and an asshole. While being in a relationship I had an affair with another woman. Not the worst part. But every now and then I asked my girlfriend to drive me to my affair. Had some stories that friends meet there or something like that. When I was done with the affair I often called my GF to pick me up again. Sorry. Throw away for reasons. I ghosted a girl I just met who was clearly looking for friendship. I did it because there was something off about her that scared me. It was a gut instinct. I would be terrified to answer her texts like they were going to kill me. Eventually I blocked her number but I can't help but feel guilty about it. When I was 14. I met a 12-year-old girl playing at the beach. We played all afternoon. She was not slender. And 14-year-old me fancied himself a comedian. So while we tried to dunk each other I spent the day saying things like, I'm fighting a losing battle, ship and other things I regret. Even 40 years later my wife never lets me forget how we met. In college at a punk show in a basement venue. Bunch of whiskey and speed because we like to party. I always keep my wallet in my back right pocket. I felt someone's hand go into my pocket. I reached back and my wallet was gone. I spin around and grab the two dudes behind me by the collars and tell them to give me my wallet. Their eyes got large so I knocked them both together a few times to get them to listen. Give me my wallet or I'll punch you in your fucking face. They are now begging and swearing not to have done anything. I tell them I'll let them go but as soon as I'll let them go I'll be expecting my wallet. Immediately. At that point I touch my back left pocket and who do I feel? Oops. There's the old wallet. Sorry guys but it was too late. They had run away and out the building. Bitched out at SR employee. I had taken a few shots before. And combined with my anxiety, I turned into Karen. I was seeing this guy when I was 20ish for a few months. He was very nice. But dumb as a stick so we just never really connected but he seemed to like me a lot. I was bored so I just went with it. A guy friend that I actually really liked decided he wanted to date now. So I just stopped answering the other guy's calls and texts, also known as ghosting today. He tried to contact me for months and I still feel kinda bad about it. Sorry Stefan. Me and my friend were hanging out at lunch during middle school when our bully came up and started bothering us. He threw something at my friend and it fell on the floor and a teacher asked whoever threw it to pick it up. The bully lied and said my friend threw it. And for some reason I sides with the bully. I don't know why, I think I just wanted to seem cool. Now it just bothers me when I just think about it randomly. Sorry Jeffrey. When I was a teen, I went to a restaurant with several of my friends. We had been at an arcade earlier, so I had a pocket full of quarters. My tip that night was quarters sprinkled in glasses, in food, and on plates. Thought it would be funny, but I look back on it now and it wasn't. It's something for which I'm deeply ashamed, and it fills me with regret every time I think of it. Now I am extremely nice to the wait staff. I contacted animal services to come out and set a trap for a feral cat I had seen in the neighborhood. They would come check it on a daily basis. Didn't realize they had caught my neighbor's cat. She would let it out of the house every day when she went to work, without a collar or any kind of identification. Found out when she came to my door one night crying. She saw her cat online at the animal services website. Called to tell them it was her cat and she would be by to get it. She took too long and the cat was put down. I spent a lot of time being an asshole. I was young and immature and I treated an ex like absolute shit. He made me crumpets in bed one morning before heading off to a really stressful job. Just as he was kissing me goodbye, I dropped that I'd been cheating on him. I will forever regret hurting him the way I did. He was so hurt he moved county and left all of his friends and family behind because being close to me was too difficult for him. This one time my then GF, 20, and I, 21, were going at it pretty hot and heavy. Things got out of control and we ended up doing it without protection. We panicked and went to get some plan B. But we were both freaking out that it wouldn't work. I brought up abortion and she was kind of on the fence about it. I spent weeks trying to convince her to do it if she was pregnant. After an argument, she caved. Lucky that she wasn't pregnant after the longest 4 days of my life. Looking back, I still feel shitty. We were young, in love. Both of us were kinda going through depression. And we slipped up. And I screwed up by trying to convince her what to do with her body, and she only caved because she didn't want to lose me. Made my dad cry, telling him if he stayed in the house for longer he wouldn't have killed my mum. Bro, where do I start? Lol. I guess my worst experience would be the time a friend of mine from work brought his family to a barbecue I had. Really nice family. Pretty wife who manages a clothing store at the local mall and 2 great kids. One in high school, the other in middle school. While talking to the older child, I mentioned how much he looks like his dad. He looked at me strangely and walked away. They left soon after without telling me. The next time I saw my friend at work, I mentioned his leaving early and he pulled me aside and said, "Did you really tell my daughter that she looks like a man?" I could have melted into a puddle of embarrassed goo right there. After apologizing profusely, I begged to be allowed to apologize to the young lady in person, but he wouldn't let me. I haven't heard from him since. I still feel awful about that to this day. When I was a kid, one Christmas my class did one of those gift exchanges where 2 people had to give each other gifts. I bought a toy that had a baby doll and bottle in it, and she brought one of her old toys, one of those bendy plastic toys with the wires inside. Naturally, 9-year-old me was indignant over the fact I used my hard-earned allowance to buy her something new while she brought me one of her old throwaways, so I refused the gift exchange. Looking back, I do kinda wish I had been the bigger person and just gracefully accepted her gift. But then again, 9-year-olds are not known for being reasonable. Scheduling a one-on-one meeting for work with a woman at a restaurant where there was a special event. There was a chance an ex who had ghosted me would be there too, as we were both members. She did attend the event, and with friends. I regretted going almost immediately. I tried sitting where she wouldn't able to see me, but she was must have on the way to the bathroom. The next thing I knew, she was standing with 2 of her friends gesturing at me angrily from across the room. I guess she must have freaked out when she saw me and then texted them to come over. They escorted her past where I was, even though it was like 50 feet away. I did not enjoy seeing her upset and could not figure out an appropriate way to respond. Edited for clarity. When I was like 17, I was sitting at a stoplight listening to the radio, when the light turned green and the person behind me immediately honked. I had some anger issues then, so I honked back and gave him the finger. It was like a 70-year-old man. I then realized that the honking came from a radio commercial. TLDR flicked off and honked at an older gentleman for no reason. I outed my best friend in high school at our very conservative private school. She had done something pretty bad to me which led to it, but that isn't really an excuse. She ended up being bullied so badly she had to drop out and switch to public school. Maybe there were times I'd been more of an asshole, but that is the one that I felt the most guilt for over the years. About 5 years after I saw her and finally got to apologize, and she was very kind about it, but it still makes me feel guilt to this day. I was in a long-term relationship. I had an affair and left my partner for someone else. I was with the new partner for a year but couldn't let go of my ex. And was still communicating with him as friends. After a year, I left the new partner to try to work things out with the ex. But kept communicating with the new ex. I unintentionally strung them both along because I loved them both. But I ended up just hurting everyone involved. I'm still dealing with the repercussions. The moral of the story is, don't have an affair and fall in love when you're still in love with someone else. When my best friend was bullied, I sometimes joined along, wanting to look cool in front of the cool kids. One time in 5th grade I made a substitute get really upset because she worked at McDonald's and kept praising it and how she got her degree through a McDonald's scholarship or something, and I just kept saying in and out is better and you should have worked there. Like the asshole I am. I still feel bad about it 3 years later. At a convenience store recently, the nice little old man ringing me up asked if that was everything. And I exclaimed yes, sir. And then realized that his name tag said Gail. And he was actually a little old lady. I used to pull that nice guy bullshit. Ask a girl out. Get rejected. Desperately plead my case about how nice I was, even though trying to guilt trip your way into a date is not a nice thing to do at all. Then get frustrated when she avoided me and unfriended me on Facebook. Pretty embarrassing to look back on. But if you can't look back and realize you were a total asshole sometimes, you're probably still an asshole. If you want to get nothing in return, you can like and join my Discord. There is a link in the description.